certainly comes down to it, and we're talking about this during the regular show in a moment, that the best chance you have of winning this game is to make it be about your strength. Listen, I have a lot of belief in Stetson Bennett. I think that Stetson Bennett earned more belief in himself with the way that he played against Michigan. But even if Bennett plays his best possible game, which I think is a very high level of performance, it's unlikely that you outplay the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. That's just Alabama's strength. Alabama's top strength is its quarterback, Bryce Young. Georgia's top strength is its defense. In a lot of ways, and we'll get more into this in a moment, but in a lot of ways, what this game comes down to on Monday night is, can Alabama make it be about its number one strength, its great quarterback, or can Georgia make this game be about its great strength, its number one defense? And that's, in some cases, football gets to be just as simple as that. By the way, we're on all the platforms now. We'll get ready to get started here in a moment. Let's see what else. Kevin Mills, I don't want to answer that question as of yet, just to kind of keep the evil spirits at bay, but that is certainly on our minds, and we'll certainly look forward to talking about that if the time comes for us to be able to do that. Great to be a dog says, and by the way, it's kind of a little bit of a BA there. I kind of like that. Says, ready to end the Georgia narrative, losing games to Alabama. Reminds of the Florida issues that are finally gone. Yeah, remember that for a long time? Georgia kind of had that narrative of can't be Florida, and then that went away, and Georgia's had a lot of success since then. Maybe the same thing can start to happen here when it comes to the Alabama Crimson Tide there as well. A TV radio guy says, what's up, y'all? I have the taste of champions, and maybe that could be the thing here today. Let's see what else. Dog Biscuit says, I'm okay with losing the coin toss, but winning the game. It is kind of funny. You go back to the coin toss in the Orange Bowl where Michigan wins it, defers, and really setting up Georgia to come out and establish the game tone-setting drive with that Brock Bowers touchdown off the very beginning. So the coin toss and the decision to defer, I think, actually ended up being a pretty big deal in the Georgia-Michigan game. William Perry says, I'd have the Georgia fan 70, but would love to be 16 years younger. That's really funny for William Perry. Very good stuff. Xavier Keitel says ESPNU's playing all of UGA's games right now. So if you tune in over there, make sure you keep our screen going here as well, too. Let me get one more comment. We'll get ready to get started. Got to try to find a good one to wrap things up on. Rob says no need to overanalyze, and I think you're right about that. I mean, to me, and that's what we're going to try to do today, I'm going to give you two, I think, pretty simple points about what I want to see from Georgia on both sides of the ball. I'm going to give you – I'm not a superstitious person, but I am going to give you an example of a superstition that I'm going to adhere to on Monday as a way of – trying to change the vibe, and I'm going to also kind of take care of another superstitious type thing that I do from time to time. So we're going to try both in the physical world and the spiritual world to try to see if we can get all the stars aligned in the right direction. Jeff Sintel stopping by there as well. We'll tell you more about the big thing we're trying tomorrow, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. We will we're just going to have a really good time. Also, I'm going to tell you more about the weekend in Indianapolis, something that I'm also going to try to do there as well, which is kind of in the planning stages, but I think it's going to be really fun and really cool too. So let us just have a great, great time. Today in Atlanta, this weekend heading towards Indianapolis, fun, crazy show tomorrow that's going to be a part of all this too, and hopefully a celebration for the ages starting Monday night into Tuesday morning. Man, what a great time to be a dog fan. Glad to have you with us as we experience it all together. It's Dog Nation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Kroger, and it begins right now.
To you by Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Presented by DogNation.com. This is Dog Nation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Over the course of our show today, I want to do a couple of things with you. First of all, I'm going to tell you about something that I'm going to try this weekend in Indianapolis that I think is going to be really fun. And I hope it gives me a chance to interact with some of y'all who plan on being there, and I can't wait to tell you more about this. We'll do that coming up. Also, one of the things I'm going to tell you a lot about today is something we're going to try tomorrow, and this is going to be really cool, and I was joking about this with our video audience a moment ago. It's the kind of thing we haven't really tried before. Trying new things always a little interesting for me, but nonetheless, we will have some fun with a big national championship preview tomorrow that we want you to be part of. And so we'll tell you about that over the course of our time together today as well. Let me begin, though, with this. I think one of the things that's interesting when you are on the doorstep of the final game of the season, one way or another, this is the last game of Georgia's season coming up on Monday. A lot of us thought that Georgia had a chance to be in this spot, national championship game. A lot of us thought that Georgia might be playing Alabama because of just, it seems like championships have a tendency to go through Alabama in recent years. In fact, there are guys like David Pollack who have kind of predicted everything the way that it's played out here thus far. Georgia losing to Alabama in the SEC championship, getting its revenge in the national championship game. Many of you remember Pollack saying that before the season began. There were other similar predictions of at least the idea that Georgia and Alabama could meet up twice here over the course of the season. Now, there are a lot of the ways in which Georgia has gotten here that are a little bit surprising, but Georgia being where it is right now is not necessarily the most surprising thing. There were certainly plenty of people, whether you thought Georgia would win this game or not, there are certainly plenty of people who thought it was a strong possibility that Georgia could be in this game. So with that in mind, and sometimes I think it's kind of interesting to go way back in the past and identify some of the things that were said before the season took place about what it would take to get Georgia to this point and what it would take to get Georgia over this hump and actually win the national championship. And I want to focus in on one thing Kirby Smart said in particular. I want to go back in a moment to the summertime, preseason, before the year began, and I want to kind of focus in on something from Kirby Smart, because if the preseason promise that Kirby Smart made in the clip you're about to hear, if this promise comes to fruition, if it's fully fulfilled on Monday night, then I don't think there's any doubt that Georgia's going to beat Alabama and Georgia's going to be on that field, confetti raining down again, much the same way it was this past Friday, and Georgia will be the reigning national champions in college football. If the preseason promise that Kirby Smart made way back in before the year began, if it does truly come to fulfillment there on Monday. Now, let me give you a little context for this. Hold on, please. And let's go and rewind that back so we give folks the full clip. Let me give you a little bit of context for this. This is Smart talking about what he had seen from recent national champions, the success they enjoyed. This is also Smart speaking at the time from the vantage point of the assumption that JT Daniels was going to be Georgia's starting quarterback this season, which, frankly is a different topic for a different day. But that's the context here. He's talking about what recent national champions have done, and he's talking about the quarterback he has, JT Daniels, that will help be a part of all of this. But pushing that aside for a moment, Smart uses the word playmakers a couple of times here in this clip about what Georgia needs to do to resemble recent national champions. This was Smart's sort of preseason expectation for how this Georgia offense would unfold here this year. And I think on the doorstep of playing the biggest game of them all, what Smart said before the year began to me seems more relevant now than ever before. This is Kirby Smart from the summer.
Using your playmakers. Coach Monken has that experience doing it in the NFL. I mean, with Tampa Bay, they led the league in passing. So we have the recipe for those things. We got to stay healthy. We got to protect the quarterback, and we got to find some more skill players to make plays for us.
So Kirby Smart says, you got to stay healthy, you got to protect quarterback, things like that. But at the beginning of that clip, at the end of that clip, he says, you got to use playmakers. You got to go out there and cultivate playmakers and use them, get the most out of them. Lean on Todd Monken's experience as an NFL play caller, someone who has experience doing this in the Sunday League. Lean on that experience, and if you do that, you have a chance to have a very special season, much the same way previous national champions have had. Guess what? When Kirby Smart said that this summer, it was true, and on the doorstep of Georgia playing the most important game that it could ever play against Alabama on Monday night, Smart's words from the summer remain just as true, if not more true. That if Smart really can, and Todd Monken is the leader of this offense, if they really can put Georgia's full display of playmakers into action on Monday, that right there could truly be the difference. And I love the fact that Smart articulates it as Todd Monken, based on what he's done in the past, being the reason to believe that Georgia can do that right now. And let's be clear, Georgia has had a very successful offense here this season. The numbers for Stetson Bennett have been spectacular for the most part. Look at efficiency rating, things like that. The overall total offensive picture for Georgia has been pretty spectacular, points per game, things along those lines. This has been a very efficient, very successful Georgia offense. I would say the best of the Kirby Smart era. I would also say, given the opponent, given the stage, that offense that needs to be very successful, that has been very successful, needs to be even more successful in a game like this to be able to get that done. And Smart pointing the finger at Todd Monken before the year began as this is the guy who's going to lead us there, using his NFL pedigree. What Smart said then also seems just as important, if not more important and more true, relevant than ever, going into the game against Alabama. So with that in mind, I just went back in time with Kirby Smart to the summer on the notion of getting playmakers involved. That's how you make yourself look like a national champion. Todd Monken, NFL, pedigree, has a chance to do that. What if we went back in time even further for a moment? Let's look at Todd Monken here for a moment. Not anything that he said this week. Let's go back to when he was in the NFL, when he was doing the things that Kirby Smart said he did do as a way of previewing what Georgia might do here this year. Let's go back to when Todd Monken was with the Cleveland Browns, talking about the time in Tampa, and that's what Kirby Smart also referenced there, as the play caller for the Tampa Bay Bucs, and they had a very successful NFL-leading type passing offense. What Todd Monken said about playmakers at the time also sort of feels pretty important to think about what's going to happen on Monday here. So to kind of set you up for this, Kirby Smart during the summer said, hey, we will look like a national champion if we cultivate playmakers and use them effectively. Todd Monken's the guy to do that because he has done that in the NFL. Well, in the past, what has Todd Monken said about his ability to cultivate playmakers when he was in the NFL? Let's go back in time to his tenure in Cleveland, looking back on that NFL leading year in Tampa as a little bit of context what can also happen on Monday. This, once again, is Todd Monken.
I think balance is multiple skill players touching the football. To me, it's not always just run pass. It's, do you have enough skill players where they can touch the football? Last year at Tampa, we almost had 6 guys, if OJ doesn't get hurt, of 700-plus yards from line of scrimmage. Well, to me, that's balance. You have a number of guys that can hurt you from a matchup standpoint. Is running the football important? Sure, because in order to win, you've got to be explosive and not turning the ball over. How do you become explosive space players and throwing it over their head or throwing intermediate pockets, and running the football adds to that? I mean,
listen, that is the kind of thing, the kind of language from Monken that got Georgia fans excited about him before he was hired, when he was hired. And his 2 years as Georgia offensive coordinator have clearly been successful. But this notion of you demonstrate your balance as an offensive coordinator by how many playmakers you get involved, echoing what Kirby Smart said in the summer, that will look the most like a national championship team when we cultivate these playmakers and use them effectively, isn't all of that what cries out to happen on Monday against Alabama? And if you want to make this time against the Crimson Tide different than previous times, isn't that the thing? That Brock Bowers is going to probably have a good game. He had a good game the last time. Had a good game against Michigan. These are defenses that are successful, and certainly coaches smart enough to know that Georgia wants to throw the ball to Brock Bowers, and yet they still were able to do that anyway. I think you can rightly assume that Brock Bowers probably has a good game on Monday, but Bowers alone is not going to be enough. As Todd Monken said, you have to have a balance of other playmakers getting involved as well. And this, to me, is the thing, that if you want to make this game better than the last time, the fair question to ask is what's going to be different? Well, I think if you're a Georgia fan, here's the thing you got to hope is different. It's Brock Bowers plus James Cook. It's Brock Bowers plus more of George Pickens. It's Brock Bowers plus more of Darnell Washington. I mean, to me, those are really the guys right there, right? A healthier Pickens who was on the field a lot against Michigan, certainly did not shy away from the physicality in the game, and now earns the right to potentially get more touches in this game against Alabama. Darnell Washington, who did have a touchdown against Alabama before, finding a way to use him even more. Georgia's the only team in the country that can use Darnell Washington because he's on their roster. And it's Georgia's opportunity to use him as one of those playmakers that Smart was alluding to back in the summer Monday night's the night to do that in the biggest way possible. I'd say the same thing about James Cook because of the versatility he showed against Michigan and some of the stuff that he's shown you this year. A guy like Jermaine Burton's on that list for me there as well. That finding someone, whether it's from the ranks of receivers like Burton, the ranks of running backs like James Cook, another tight end like Darnell Washington, finding you someone who can be a playmaker alongside what Brock Bowers has been for you all year long, that's the way I believe to make this time against Alabama different than the last time, at least on the offensive side of the ball. So to sum all this up, Kirby Smart told you back during the preseason that when you look at recent national champions, here's what you see. A breadth of playmakers who are put into space and given a chance to show what they're all about. And on Monday night, using the expertise that Todd Monken cultivated while being in the NFL, Georgia has a chance to do that. They've turned Brock Bowers into one. He's had an unbelievable record-setting season for UGA. But can they find somebody else to go alongside Bowers in this big spot? If they do, I think there's a very good chance that Georgia is the national champion once this game is done. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is Dog Nation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger, and glad to have you with us, no matter how you get to us, live on video, 10 a.m., Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Radio Noon, Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, podcast form, or wherever you find them, including the world-famous DogNation.com. Also, 945, 1st and 15, special video only for the folks that watch at DogNation.com and on the Dog Nation app. We get going there at 9:45. Glad to have you with us as a part of what we're doing today. Our final edition of Dog Nation Daily before we head to Indianapolis. And boy, I tell you what, a really exciting day for us, getting ready for everything that's going to go down. We couldn't do any of this without our friends at Kroger, who make this show possible and have been such good friends of ours for such a long time here around Dog Nation Daily. And by the way, Kroger's got a great new program I want you to be aware of there as well. It's called Kroger Boost. It's a opportunity to join up and get more savings, more benefits, and an entirely new level of membership from our friends at Kroger. With Boost, you can get free grocery delivery, up to twice the fuel points as well, and all kinds of special offers. And the good news is you can enroll for as little as $59 a year, just $59 a year. So check out the website. It's Kroger.com/boost. That's Kroger.com/boost for your chance to be a part of that today. Something else you get a chance to be a part of here very soon is Jeff Sintel making an appearance in our program. Concurrent to this lead up to the national championship game, it's also been a busy time for recruiting with the Under Armour game in Orlando, the All-American Bowl, this upcoming weekend in San Antonio. Obviously, Georgia hoping for some good news with Ernest Greene there in that spot. So we'll get a lot of updates on the Georgia recruiting story from Jeff here coming up in just a little bit. There's been a lot going on there on that front. Let me do this real quickly before we do. And before our show began, I was somewhat derided by our producer, Michael Carvel, for being too negative on this. I'm sarcastic by nature. But we're going to try something tomorrow that we've never done before. And I am legitimately, I'm always somewhat pensive about how things like this work out. But I am really excited about this there as well. Because in my mind here this week, and I told you this on Thursday, that the reality of what Georgia's about to do just kind of overwhelmed me. Play for a national championship. Obviously, we all lived through this back in 2017. But now to be back in this spot again, and these are just the kind of the big moments. One way or another, for the good or for the bad, you will remember January 10th, 2022 for the rest of your life, either as a continuation of a narrative that you don't like or the starting and the turning of a page of a new chapter that is obviously quite favorable. One way or another, we're going to really remember this night for many years to come. And so the build-up to that, I think, should fully appreciate the weight of what's at stake during that game. So I wanted to kind of do something we've never done before. So here's what we're going to do tomorrow. And by tomorrow, I mean Saturday. Tomorrow at 12:30 p.m., we're going to come on the air live from studio, and we're going to do another Chase for the Championship special, obviously presented by our friends at Kroger and Marlowe's Tavern and R.S. Andrews and Georgia Farm Bureau. We're going to do a very special Chase for the Championship, and some of that's going to include looking at some of what is said by Georgia coaches and players moving into the national championship game. They'll speak live from Indianapolis tomorrow. We'll give you some of that on Chase for the Championship. But the thing we're going to do most of, which I'm really excited about, is we have never done kind of like what you think of as the live caller show before. We've had the capabilities for years. We just haven't really done that. Part of that's because I'm an egomaniac and I like to control the conversation. I say half kiddingly, but also because it's just sometimes, just logistically speaking, kind of hard to do that. We have a lot going on, a lot of news we have to cover, and so sometimes you don't get a chance to do as much of the things you'd like to do. But the Saturday before a national championship game on Monday feels like the right time to do this. It feels like the kind of time where, hey, it's more than just my voice saying what a national championship would mean, although I feel like I can certainly articulate my perspective on that. I think it's appropriate to hear from a number of voices there as well. So tomorrow we're going to invite you to be a part of the program live, not me reading your comments. You get a chance to voice your comment. And instead of doing this by phone call, although we could do that, I think it's going to be easier and really actually better if we do this via Zoom. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to blast out this link to anybody who wants it. We'll put it on the Dog Nation website. We'll put it on social media. We'll kind of put it everywhere. And if you want to be a part of the conversation, I genuinely hope that you will be. If you want to be a part of the conversation, you simply are going to click into the link and you're going to be in a waiting room. And there's a very good chance that we may not be able to take every person that comes in. I'm going to really try to. I'm going to try to keep it moving on air to, allow as many people to get in as possible. So if you come in and you say a few words, and if I move on from you pretty quick, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to get other people involved if possible that want to be. Going to try to do as much of that as we can. So we'll put you in the waiting room. We'll bring you on kind of one at a time. We'll kind of give you your piece. If you've ever listened to an old school call-in show or something along those lines, that is what this is going to be on video tomorrow. That means you can, show off your Georgia room. Some of you have cool ones. You can wear your Georgia gear. You can do whatever you want to. We'll let you tell folks your name. We'll let you tell folks what you think about the game, what a national championship would mean to you. And we're just going to try to get together underneath the umbrella of a Chase for the Championship show as a way of trying to put as many good vibes into the universe as we can about giving Georgia a great chance to win this game on Monday. I'm really excited. I love interactive stuff. I like reading your comments, and this is kind of the next level of that, the kind of thing on Dog Nation Daily presented by Kroger we just haven't really done before. And so as a part of a Chase for the Championship show tomorrow, that is what we're going to do. Now, one more thing, and then we'll kind of move on from this. The other thing that we're going to do, or this I'm going to do personally, is I am going to be in Indianapolis on Sunday night and Monday. Now, I got a lot of broadcasts I have to do on Monday, but here's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to take a bunch of Indianapolis-themed Dog Nation Chase for the Championship t-shirts with me to Indianapolis. And that means on Sunday night, downtown area, I'm going to try to go out where dog fans are. I'm going to try to, come out and see you wherever you are. And I'm going to try to give out as many Chase for the Championship t-shirts as I can. Now, being in Indianapolis, it would probably make more sense if I was giving out Chase the Championship parkas because of how cold it's going to be. But nonetheless, I think the T-shirt's going to be a really cool memory for you. Michael, how hard would it be? Can you pull up the Chase the Championship logo? Do you have that? Pull that up on the screen if you don't mind. We have Chase for the Championship T-shirts on the way to Indianapolis. Just kind of a cool memory of, us, kind of going there. Yeah, that's what the logo looks like. The highway sign on the way to Indianapolis, Chase for the Championship. When Georgia wins the national championship on Monday, you're going to be really glad you have one of these T-shirts. And I've got a bunch of them that I'm going to give away in Indianapolis on Sunday night. I'm going to give some of those away before the game there on Monday. I'm literally going to be like Santa Claus walking around with a bag full of T-shirts, giving these kinds of things out. It's just something fun I want to do. Don't have to do this. I just want to do it. So we're going to do this in Indianapolis. So hit me up. Let me know where you're going to be. Let me know where dog fans are going to be. I'll let you know kind of where I am. I'm going to just try to be out and about a bunch on Sunday evening doing this because I'm not going to be there technically until Sunday, but a bunch on Sunday evening doing this, a bunch on Monday. Let's just have a good time. I mean, look, this is kind of all I want out of all of this. Let's just make this a fun weekend. Those of us who get a chance to be there, or really those of us who get a chance to even watch this with family and friends, we're lucky. This is fun. It's supposed to be fun. Let's make this as much fun as we can. So one of my ways to do that, be with you live tomorrow, take your calls on video. Also in Indianapolis this weekend, giving out those Chase for the Championship T-shirts. And then when Georgia wins that national championship, you can hold that thing up and say, wow, I got a real cool souvenir. By the way, that's totally free. Those are free T-shirts. Just simply find me, and I'll make sure I give you one while supplies last, as the marketing folks make me say. But nonetheless, it's just going to be a really fun weekend all the way around with that. All right, let's do a quick version of Around the Doghouse before we bring on Jeff Sentell. And A moment ago, I gave you, I think, one offensive key to victory for Georgia. Get playmakers involved. We know Brock Bowers can have a good game. And yeah, I know that Todd Monk was asked this week about, well, you worried about Alabama taking Brock Bowers away? Listen, Alabama knew how good Brock Bowers was going into the last game. So did Michigan there as well. They still couldn't take him away. That's how good Brock Bowers is right now. But you got to have more than just Brock Bowers in this game. I want Bowers to be as effective as he was the last time. I just want somebody else to be kind of there alongside with that, creating the same kind of dynamic playmaking thing. Smart said in the offseason, this is what national champions do. On Monday, Georgia gets to be a national champion by doing just that. But let me give you the other side of the ball just for a moment, because the key to the game defensively, and you already know this before I say it, it literally doesn't get more simpler than this. Georgia has got to get that pass rush going. And you have heard it said 1,000 different times this week about how Georgia does that. It's almost like it's a challenge to even, kind of rephrase it in a way that hasn't already been heard. But to me, it kind of comes down to just something this basic. What is Alabama's number one strength? It's the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Bryce Young, the best young quarterback in the game right now. Even Georgia at its best offensively, it's difficult to match what Bryce Young provides for you because that's how good he is. And yet, Georgia's number one strength is its defense. Georgia's got the best defense in the country. Didn't look like that the last time these two teams played. But over the course of 14 games, clearly been the best defense in the country. You can make a case of one of the best defenses in recent history in college football. So you potentially have Bama's strength against Georgia's strength. And in the first game when these two teams played, it was the Bama strength passing game that dictated the way in which the game was played. And that just can't be true this time. Georgia's got to assert itself defensively really from the word go. Pass pressure is the way that you do that. And when Dan Lanning, who will be in his last game officially as Georgia assistant coach and defensive coordinator on Monday night, when Lanning spoke a little earlier this week, he certainly acknowledged that, yeah, pressure is something that Georgia definitely wants to get against Bryce Young on Monday, but he was a little coy about exactly how UGA gets that done. This is what Lanning said.
Yeah, ultimately we want to create pressure. We want to be able to get after Bryce. As far as how we're going to do it, I don't want to give away all our secrets yet. Hopefully we can wait till after the game to figure that out. But, we want to generate pressure, and certainly there's a lot of different ways you can do that. He's really good at avoiding the rush, and they did some unique things to protect him. So we have to attack it a little bit differently, but, how we do that, there's a lot of different ways we can do it.
I won't pretend to be as smart as Dan Lanning when it comes to football or Kirby Smart either. To my eyes, the one thing it certainly seemed like, and we kind of got into this a little bit with Connor Riley when he was on the show on Tuesday, is a lot of that attempt to bring the heat on Young the first time around seemed to come up from up the middle. And you understand why that'd be the case when you've got guys like Nakobe and Channing Tindall. Those are really good players, and you've got to involve them in as many ways as you can, but it's also kind of playing into Bryce Young's strength. If you've got a quarterback like Mac Jones back there, pressure from up the middle probably makes some sense because he's not as good at using lateral quickness to avoid that. But in the case of Young, it's almost like you want to bring that pressure around the edge, because that's where your Trayvon Walkers and your Nolan Smiths are, and guys like that have to have a big game on Monday, but also because, honestly, I want to see if Bryce Young wants to step into that pocket. I want to see if he wants to step into those throws. I want to see what happens when he knows he's about to get walloped. Now, as Mike Griffith pointed out, I think last night, Georgia did get some technical pressures, if you want to define them that way, on Young. But they didn't really turn into knockdowns. They didn't really turn into sacks. So you've got to actually get home in this game on Monday. But whether it's because of a better scheme, hopefully, or just better individual performances, maybe, Georgia getting that pressure coming off the edge, forcing Young to step into a crowded pocket with guys breathing right into his face and finding out how comfortable he is throwing the football under those circumstances. When it comes to this game on Monday, it really is just that simple. All right, before we are done on today's show, there are a couple of things that I'm going to acknowledge you from a superstitious standpoint that I'm going to do, related to Monday. One of those things on this show here today, and one of those things is actually on Monday night. Now, I am not a superstitious person. I really am not. I don't find superstition to be a particularly admirable trait. But I'm also willing to pull out all the stops for a game like this. So a little bit of a superstition that I'm going to attempt to adhere to going into Monday. I'll tell you about that. I'll also try to, handle something on today's show in that regard there as well. So we'll do a lot of that coming up. There's also some interesting news around the rest of the SEC, some big-time transfer names, some other stuff kind of going on there. So we'll cover all the bases on that. But for now, in San Antonio, where the All-American Bowl takes place on Saturday, and Georgia hopes to get some good news from four-star offensive lineman Ernest Greene. Prior to that, in Orlando, the Under Armour game, where a lot of Georgia targets and Georgia signees had a chance to really show out. It has actually been a busy last few days for Georgia recruiting, and so we're going to cover all of that here today. We'll get ready to welcome in Jeff Sintel as we go on the road, assisted by AAA, before we hit the road and head to Indianapolis for the weekend. Jeff's going to be there as well. So thanks to all of you for being with us on the program today. Glad to have Jeff Sintel here as well as we check in on some UGA recruiting talk on the road, assisted by AAA.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DogNation.com insider.
On the road, assisted by AAA with Jeff Sintel. And boy, Jeff's covered a lot of ground here recently in Orlando, in Miami, then to San Antonio, finishing things off here in Indianapolis coming up on the weekend. But obviously a lot of UGA recruiting stuff to talk about right now. And so, Jeff, you're in San Antonio where the All-American Bowl is going to take place on Saturday, tomorrow. And I think you're probably like me. In a lot of ways, the practice is more interesting than the game. I like the fact that players get the game on TV as a reward for the great careers they've had. But in terms of the evaluation stuff, it's really sometimes the practices that I think kind of loom as more important. So you've been evaluating UGA prospects over the course of the last few days. You've had a chance to watch some of those guys play, and also in comparison to some of the guys that'll be playing against them for some future rival programs there as well. Let me just kind of dive in with this from San Antonio. What has jumped out to you this week?
There's a lot, Brandon, and good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's getting geared up and calming their inner Munsons here about the game on Monday. I think we were going back and forth on Cover 4 last night, Brandon, and you made a point that probably deserved an amen from the corner when you talked about the past. Folks got to remember, Kirby Smart has won an Orange Bowl, a Sugar Bowl, a Peach Bowl, a Rose Bowl in like 6 years as the Georgia head coach. I think Coach Dooley only won two of those. He only won two of those in all of his time as Georgia head coach for 25 years. That's the past. The present is they're playing for the national title. Nothing really more needs to be said about that. And let me give you a good dose of the future, Brandon. I think this recruiting class that Georgia has assembled here is just about perfect. And I say that because the just about clarifier is because they don't have that devastating dynamite wide receiver. And I'll have a kind of a really great story about that coming up probably shortly after the national championship game in this class and kind of the DNA of how that came to be. Georgia missing out on a top flight receiver again, Brandon. But here's the good stuff, man. Mikel Williams has been the best player here at the All-American Bowl from the jump. And for me, I evaluate great players simply like this, especially by getting to see them at all these levels. You think about Mikel and you think about him from Hardaway High School, and that's an area where there's not a lot of football trainers. There's not a lot of great football. There's not a lot of facilities. There's not a lot of great football programs in the state of Georgia. You had to rank the Columbus area. I'd probably say it's one of the least successful football pockets and hotbeds in the state of Georgia. You got Augusta, you got Albany. They're all well trailing behind like the Macon Middle Georgia area. Obviously, Metro Atlanta, Gwinnett County, and even South Georgia with places like Colquitt County and obviously Valdosta, places like that in Camden. So Mikel comes out of that place, and I think he owes a lot of his gifts and his knowledge to Chuck Smith, who does such a great job in the Atlanta area working with stuff as Dr. Rush, Brandon. But I want to take you to a scene yesterday from practice. And Mikel Williams has been the shining star of these practices so far because he has elevated his game considerably, even against these great players. And I don't even think Trayvon Walker looked as effective in these elements, in these environments, in these events as Mikel Williams has right now. And you know what, Brandon? Probably the second best guy here on the East team with the upside. Maybe second or third. You got to probably throw in a Penn State quarterback or a Penn State running back here as well. But Marvin Jones Jr. has been really stinking good as well. And those two guys have played on the same side a lot. Mikel's playing inside, more of like a defensive tackle, and then Marvin's kind of coming out as more of a traditional edge. I guess Mikel's working as a 5-tech, a lot of this stuff. And what they did yesterday is they started talking to each other. Marvin was like, "Hey man, what are you doing so well? I need to get me some of that." Here's what happens, Brandon. Mikel opens up the toolbox and starts articulating what he's doing, what he's thinking, the operational procedure of how he's dominating these guys for the West team. And those guys have a little 15-minute clinic. Mikel was not only doing all these things well on the field, he was able to verbalize and teach those to Marvin Jones Jr. at the same time. Now, if we look at a player like Marvin Jones Jr., maybe his ceiling, maybe his upside is a lot bigger, maybe even a little bit higher than Mikel Williams is right now, because he's got a long ways to go. He doesn't really know all these things and, have the football savvy and IQ that Mikel Williams does right now. But then you start piecing this together with everything around it. Gunnar Stockton's definitely one of the most accurate quarterbacks here. The boys gravitate to him at this All-American setting like they do at FBU events or like they did at 7-on-7 events. And here we are at an All-American game, and everybody loves Gunnar. They refer to him as their dad because he's the guy keeping everybody in check and keeping everybody in line. You look over across the practice field, Brandon, and you see Julian Humphrey. And, man, that guy cannot stay still for more than 37 seconds. You just look at all these pieces, and when this was coming together in December, I tweeted out something that just kind of coyly, kind of slyly pointed at what I was seeing developing. And I used the Perfect Storm clip from that movie with Mark Wahlberg and George Clooney. What George is putting together in this class with a lot of pieces, a lot of different pieces. And then you see a guy like Christian Miller who's looking at what Georgia can be with a Marvin Jones and a Mikel Williams on the front with different other pieces. And it really looks to me like, Brandon, he likes what he has to see. He's going to take that thing to February the 2nd. But you combine that with what I saw at the Under Armour All-American game and guys like Branson Robinson, Jalen Walker, Cedric Washington Jr., Big Bear Alexander. Whoa, Nelly, I've got a great Big Bear Alexander story to share with you guys in a couple of days. But, I mean, it's just everything, Brandon, which makes me feel like, when we were in that back and forth about how in the world can, Georgia stay up with all these recruiting worries or those evils lurking around the corner, as you like to mention it. Folks, the players are there. They're on their way. The cupboards are being refilled with some of that incredible Kroger Boost type groceries and service. It really looks like this program is going to be a lot better 2 or 3 years from now than they are right now. So
it's interesting on Mikel Williams. I remember when the Alabama program first kind of really got it cooking under Nick Saban. I'm talking about when they were really cranking it out. And at the time, Georgia could only be envious of what Alabama was building there. And I remember the time, Jeff, what impressed me about the Alabama players they were bringing in, obviously the size and the athleticism to go along with that. But this is kind of a weird thing to notice. But the other thing I kind of noticed was their posture. Their big guys stood up tall, shoulders back. Not only did they have good size, they carried that good size in a very comfortable way. And that was, to me, always the hallmark of an Alabama player. I remember being on the field for like some of those early Atlanta games when Alabama would be playing a Clemson or Virginia Tech or something like that. The Alabama players just look different than their opponent because they're standing tall, their shoulders are back. They just have this imposing posture that made the players just seem very serious. And when Kirby Smart kind of really got it cranking at Georgia from a recruiting standpoint, one of the things that impressed me was all of a sudden Georgia had players that started looking like that too. They weren't big guys who were kind of hunched over. They were big guys who stood even taller, shoulders broad and back. And you mentioned one of those guys a moment ago in Trayvon Walker. I remember the first time I met Trayvon, kind of end-of-season banquet event. He's in a suit and tie. But that's all you needed to know. Like, this guy was clearly a football player by the way he wore a suit and tie. And I've had a chance to meet Mikel a couple of times, also kind of in a street clothes type situation. And it's the same kind of thing for me where, clearly his credentials in the football field are well established, but it's almost like there's a look that a guy like that gives off that reminds me of Trayvon Walker, which also kind of reminds me of the best of what Nick Saban once brought to Alabama, that they're just some dudes you just sort of look at him and tell. And for me, Mikel Williams is one of those guys I can just sort of look at and tell.
Brendan, here's what you've figured out with, and I'm glad you noticed that. Something has changed with Georgia over the last 1 or 2 recruiting cycles. And I mean that because they're recruiting linebackers, maybe traditional inside linebackers that can fill gaps and can flow sideline to sideline and chase guys down. Jalen Walker, Cedric Washington, Shmal Munden, Xavier Sorey Jr., guys that are kind of interchangeable at the inside or the outside spot. But then their recruiting classes were filled with guys like the pretty much incomparable Nolan Smith, who, means so much and bleeds so much for Georgia. You can tell it really cares about it. But physically, Brandon, he's only about 6'2.5", 6'3", and about 230 pounds. It's more like inside linebacker size. You look at M.J. Sherman, a guy that's a little bit different than what the guys are recruiting now. Throw Chaz Chambliss in there as well. But look what Georgia's bringing in this class. Marvin Jones, man, is about 6'5", 6'4 3/4", and about 252 pounds. Mikel's about 6'5" and 260. And these are the guys that can play out in the edge. And, man, it is so hard to not throw out a tantalizing name with player comps for what Mikel and what Marvin Jones Jr. can be. But it looks like Georgia's going after a guy, a prototype guy for that edge position that can do a lot of things, rush the passer, create havoc, what you will say. And they're getting guys now that are in that Joey Bosa mold, Brandon, that Chase Young physical package mold, where it's a little bit different than the 6'3", 230 that everybody was thinking was that hyper fast. Mikel Sherman was very fast. Chaz Chambliss is incredible. I think he makes a play every time he's on the field for Georgia, much like Jamon Dumas-Johnson. But you're getting guys that are bigger and longer and just athletic, and that seems where the game is going, Brandon. And I'm going to say this. I'm trying to really avoid recency bias because I've been thinking about this for a lot of times. But, Brandon, brother, these eyes have not seen two pass rushers quite like Marvin Jones Jr. and Mikel Williams in a class, in one of Kirby Smart's classes yet. And then you're going to drop in some names like Big Bear Alexander on that front as well, and Jalen Walker, and then all these terrific DBs. I mean, one scouting service, Rivals.com, was talking to them this week, and they're now considering Julian Humphrey for 5-star consideration. And, he's playing right now with a hip flexor issue. You got Oscar Delp, who's had a hamstring issue, and a guy that basically seems like everything he does is very easy. It doesn't look like he's extending a lot of effort when maybe he actually is. And he's had a kind of a hamstring that's been acting up on him all week, but he's still practicing. He's still taking reps. Brandon, he's actually the only real true tight end here in San Antonio after a lot of COVID casualties and injury concerns to a lot of other guys. And, man, everywhere you just look right now, it just seems everybody's focusing on right now and January 10th in Indianapolis. I'm going to promise you this, man. The players are going to keep getting better, and Georgia's going to keep getting into this spot with assemblage of roster talent that I think Emperor Palpatine would be proud of.
So I want to talk about Ernest. We'll get to Ernest Greene in a moment. I want to tell you about Marvin Jones Jr. here because you brought him up, but also your story on Jones at Dog Nation is just one of the best. I'm just telling you right now, folks should check that out. And the picture is just so perfect. So for those who haven't seen it, and you go to dognation.com, see it for yourself. And honestly, the picture tells the story, but the story itself goes along with it very well. So the picture is Jones in the middle with a gazillion Michigan fans around him. Jeff, how did you know where Jones was in the stadium to get this shot?
Well, I got to thank a lot of people because it's like I try to wear a lot of hats for Dog Nation. I'm trying to kind of turn myself into, I guess, a decent photographer over the last few years. I'd never taken a picture as a media professional until I started working for Dog Nation that was published. I got to thank, BJ Sweeney, the guy that really calls the shots for us. He allowed me to get the gear that I needed to go cover these events. So I had this big, daddy rabbit, granddaddy long legs, 400 millimeter lens. And then it's, following the families and following these guys well enough to know kind of where they're sitting. And then having the ability to whip around after a big Georgia score and kind of get Marvin's reaction. And when I saw those pictures, I thought, let me see if I can just weave it all together. The picture, the zoomed-in picture, and man, it looked like freaking Where's Waldo. I was hysterical when I saw it, and I started talking to Marvin about it, and he was like, yeah. It was funny. They started asking him, and they were like, hey, do you play? Are you like Georgia or something? Are you a fan? Do you play football at all? And he literally was like, I'm going to go play football there next year. And the whole section was like deadpan silence. I mean, it was all he had to say. And then,
well, first of all, it's the first 5-star athlete a Michigan fan's ever seen their entire life. So that in itself was probably surprising to them.
Good one. Yeah, they were probably like, oh, that's what one of those looks like. And, everybody's been asking me this question. His mom, Alex Jones, wonderful lady, nice lady, really, really great mom, really cares about her kids. Marvin was telling me, he's like, I got to be in charge of tickets next time, because when his mom, they live in Fort Lauderdale, when they bought the tickets, she didn't know there was a home side or a visiting side or a Michigan side or anything like that. So they got dropped right in the middle of Michigansville and basically felt like Ann Arbor or Detroit to them. And he looks around, and it's just one of those things. I remember those Sports Illustrated photos growing up where there was faces in the crowd, and like Michael Irvin would score a touchdown, and there'd be people in the crowd behind him going bonkers, and you just look at each one, or some of those great photos from the Masters, and you see everybody in the gallery behind them. And
it's a great photo.
The eyes on their faces where they're like wanting to react to everything, and you got Marvin just living it up as a dog in the middle of Michigan folks right there. And it was one of those things where I have the opportunity, and I consider this to be a great opportunity to kind of wear a lot of hats for us, and so I could take the photo and the relationships and then talk to him, hear all about it in detail at the Army All-American Bowl. And I was like, I've got a lot of stories to write here from this, but sometimes I'm guilty of writing the ones that are the most fun to write first. And I had to write that one about Marvin Jones Jr., man, because not only is he an absolute dude, he's a guy that's going to do a lot of great things for Georgia. Wait till you hear a couple of stories about his recruitment I've got to share. But this is what when you can put all that together, and I love it how everybody responded to it. Everybody was asking me on social media, I don't know whether they end up sitting there. Didn't they know that? And I hope that.
Well, I'll add to this, though, Jeff. One of the reasons why I like the story so much, and it is truly a great story that everyone should go out of their way to try to find, because it's so funny to hear Jones talking trash to these fans before they realize that he was a 5-star UGA signee. Like, that's just hilarious to me. But the other thing, though, is Jeff, my wife and kids were at the game, and they were in very much the same situation to begin the game where, like, it could have been the three of them surrounded by the same collection of maize and blue. And my wife, who's like the most mild-mannered person in the world, was so frustrated by this. It's not because the Michigan fans were talking about the trash and stuff like that, but, like, they're total, like, amateur hour fans. They haven't played in a big game since the leather helmet days. They're vomiting all over themselves. They have no idea, how to handle their liquor for a game like this. And she says, we got to get out of here. And so, like, they literally packed up and moved to a different section. And there were some Georgia fans who were very nice to kind of welcome them in and, let them, sit in some seats amongst other Georgia fans or whatever else. But my wife could have literally been the same situation that Marvin Jones Jr. was in, surrounded by Michigan fans who were vomiting all over themselves because they didn't know how to handle their liquor in a big game situation like this. So part of the reason why I like the story so much is it hits very close to home for what my family dealt with during the game.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy, man. You sound like Ric Flair right there talking about spilt liquor there, Brandon, talking about all those Michigan fans and not knowing what it's like to be there at that stage. But man, you should have told me where the Adams clan was. I bet that would have been a good family picture, too, to put over the mantle.
All right, let me do this really quickly. It's our On the Road assisted by AAA with Jeff Santel. By the way, speaking of AAA, we'll get into the Ernest Greene stuff here in a moment because obviously that's big news tomorrow. But don't forget, AAA got you covered, obviously, when it comes to roadside assistance. A lot of folks traveling this time of year. But beyond that, they got you covered on auto insurance there as well, because right now, putting extra money in your pocket is a very big deal. And with AAA, when you switch and save, that's exactly what you're going to do. Hundreds of dollars, potentially. So find out more about this. AAA.com/auto insurance. That's the website to go check out. Once again, AAA.com/auto insurance. You can also give them a call there as well if you'd like to. 866-380-1637. 866-380-1637. Check out AAA today and make a big decision to put more money in your pocket when it comes to auto insurance. All right, so, Jeff, the big news tomorrow is going to be the decision for 4-star offensive lineman Ernest Greene. Obviously, this is a very good-looking prospect. It's also the kind of player, frankly, that Georgia really needs. I think that it's pretty important that Georgia add that kind of top-shelf level offensive lineman to this class. Haven't really done that as of yet. Not to say the guys that Georgia are bringing in aren't good prospects, but Greene's just of a different level than all of that. So a lot of Georgia fans watching closely in on this, and I have to say that the overall vibe around the Greene story, best I can tell, is pretty positive. You have any reason to throw hot or cold water on that?
Well, everything here in San Antonio is pretty cold right now, Brandon. It's about 34 degrees. I'm about to head out to a practice, but you just sense that Georgia and Ernest Greene, you kind of teed it up pretty well there, Brandon. This would have been the first year when I'm going to write my overview and summation of the 2022 recruiting class. For a while there, Brandon, it looked like the first year where this was the first one where Georgia didn't add in Kirby Smart's time a top 100 overall lineman. But all of a sudden you've got Georgia, who was really kind of trailing Ohio State, and then they kind of got in a good spot this fall around the official visit, and then there came Alabama with some strong interest that really turned his head, and now Georgia's kind of right back in the mix of things here. And one of the things, he's rated as the nation's number 2 interior offensive lineman, number 40 overall prospect, but he is, Brandon, he's pretty much, and he's 6'3" and almost 6'4". He's about 350 with 35-inch arms. He sounds pretty set on being an offensive tackle in college. That's been the pitch that he's been most receptive to from all of these schools. And, he thinks he can play tackle at the next level. And, goodness, he's got the size and the ability to do that. He's probably, Brandon, they brought out, to show you what kind of prospect he is, they pulled the boys out earlier this week for some promotional photos for NBC Sports in the green and black uniforms, and then the pink and blue uniforms that they're going to be wearing. And Mikel Williams was one of the 2 representatives for the East team, and one of the 2 representatives for the West team was Ernest Greene III. And, man, it certainly seems like Georgia fans probably need to tune into that decision on Saturday, because it's certainly the vibe here around Ernest Greene III. Seems like Georgia might have made this a really big race with Alabama and might even have closed this thing down.
That's fun stuff to think about. Good stuff all the way around, Jeff. I look forward to seeing you in Indianapolis. Look forward to more of your coverage from San Antonio before we get there for that. And we've been on this call for a lot of time now, so don't really get into the Christian Miller stuff or the Shamar Stewart stuff, but obviously that will hold over for us there for a little while. So we will look forward to having that conversation in the time to come, and obviously appreciate your time here on this program here today.
Hey, thanks, B.A. Hey, man, I'll see everybody in Indianapolis. Get there safely, everybody.
Sounds good. You as well, Jeff.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Yeah, I mean, I don't say this unless I mean it, but you really should go out of your way on the Marvin Jones thing. I just think it's really fun. The picture's great. Jones' story about going back and forth. I mean, this is kind of like, for the rest of time, it's always going to be one of those things where Georgia fans, like Georgia players who consider themselves to also be Georgia fans, and Marvin Jones Jr. certainly had the look of that in that game there this past Friday. So that was just fun. Really, really good stuff there. By the way, what else is good? How about our friends from Royal Caribbean? We go cruising around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. You know what they do now. Back on the seas again. Everybody having a great time there, taking advantage of the wonderful ports being visited by Royal Caribbean, including Perfect Day, Coco Cay. That's the private island oasis that's available and exclusive to those who are on Royal Caribbean cruise ships, taking those Royal Caribbean cruise vacations. But it's not just that, it's the onboard entertainment there as well. I mean, I think one of the things within the cruise industry Royal Caribbean's really known for is setting the standard when it comes to onboard entertainment, whether it be the kind of activities you can participate in, like all kinds of cool stuff related to that, but also the bars, the lounges, the specialty dining, just so much fun stuff to enjoy when it comes to a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. And you can find out more about all of this yourself when you use the resource that we use for all the Royal Caribbean cruises that we're booking around here. I'm talking about the Cruise and Vacation Authority. You can check them out online, tcava.com. That's the website, tcava.com. Or you can give them a call, 770-952-8300. That's 770-952-8300. They know Royal Caribbean. They're UGA folks that run the place, so it's good to be with them because they got a tie to us here at Dog Nation, and with UGA football, they know more about Royal Caribbean than anybody possibly could. They can certainly set you up to have the most enjoyable Royal Caribbean cruise vacation possible, so make sure you check that out today. All right, we have got a lot to do here, so let's dive into that as a part of Cruising Around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. I thought this was kind of interesting. So there are a lot of alternate broadcasts this time of year via ESPN when it comes to college football playoff and some of the bowl games. I was watching the Rose Bowl from a bar the other night, and the TV that happened to be sitting in front of me was that, like, what do you call it? It's basically like almost like the producer look, where you have like the multiple screens. You got the ISO on the coaches, in both corners. You've got multiple angles of the game being shown at the same time. So it's basically like a grid of screens that you're watching from. That's what ESPN2 was showing this for the Rose Bowl. And so I'm sitting there. That's the way I'm watching the Rose Bowl the other night, because I'm kind of, watching that as I'm having a beverage and eating a meal. And it's just kind of a time to experiment, because you got all these networks and you might as well show different feeds of the game. And, for the national championship game, I think the SEC network will have like the hometown announcers feed. But also one of the things you do is that megacast, where you have the coaches feed. And in the past, it's been a bunch of coaches from across college football who kind of come in for something like this. They are not doing that this year. I don't know if they think this is just a better idea or if it's simply an easier idea, COVID and everything else. But this year, the megacast coaches feed is going to be Texas A&M coach Jimbo Fisher and his assistants there from Texas A&M. It's a little bit of a different idea, I guess. And on the one hand, I think there's a couple different vantage points that people look at this from. They're probably a little disappointed that you don't have more well-known coaches doing this, other head coaches, as opposed to just the A&M assistants. On the other hand, it's like, wait a second, how are we letting Jimbo Fisher angle in here and get himself some publicity on a day that should be about Georgia and Alabama? That's probably a fair question to ask as well. But for the non-Georgia or Alabama affiliated, and really the non-Texas A&M affiliated, I think there's a chance that one coaching staff doing this together could actually make for a decent broadcast, in that these guys have a little bit of chemistry with each other. They talk to each other about football and film all the time. And so the way in which they interact with each other could actually lead to some pretty interesting stuff. But it did get some attention that, they're doing the megacast different this year. They're bringing in one coaching staff, and it actually ends up being a pretty big commercial for Texas A&M, who is getting a lot of those kinds of things right now. By the way, speaking of A&M, former quarterback Zach Calzada is on the move, and he's transferring to Auburn. Now, there you go. That's a nice look at Zach Calzada in the new Auburn uniform there. This becomes a pretty interesting offseason for the Iron Bowl, because Calzada's actually got something pretty interesting going for him. Is he beat Alabama, and you listen on the whole notion of, instead of if you can't beat them, join them. If you didn't beat them, join up with somebody who did. That's what I guess Auburn's doing with Zach Calzada right now. And this is some much-needed positive news for an Auburn program that's just not getting a lot of that. Guys like Shane Beamer, guys like Josh Heupel had much better, I think, first years in terms of making their fans believers of what can happen in the future. Auburn didn't really have a lot of that kind of stuff. And I don't know that at times Brian Harsin necessarily felt all that well ingrained to the Southern culture. When you got somebody who kind of comes from outside the culture, inside the culture, they may do a lot of things to try to make themselves pretend like they're an insider, that they fit in. But sometimes those attempts kind of fall flat. And I think in the case of Brian Harsin, some of that kind of fell flat for him there as well. He wasn't faking accents the way that Brian Kelly does, but he seemed to be having just as much of a hard time kind of ingratiating himself to, as Auburn likes to think of itself as, the Auburn family. Getting Zach Calzada will help some of that out a little bit. I still don't know how good Calzada is, because the truth is he never came close to playing nearly as well against anybody else as he did against Alabama, which just goes to show you how weird a sport college football can be from time to time. But this is a big addition for Auburn, not the first big addition we're going to discuss in the transfer portal this offseason, or some big departures coming for almost every program in the league, probably there as well. But one of the first big announcements along those lines is in the person of Zach Calzada. By the way, speaking of quarterbacks, transfer portal, I saw where Charlie Batch, here's Batch on Twitter. Let me read this to you. He says to Caleb Williams, "Hey, Caleb Williams, have you considered coming to Eastern Michigan?" My guess is the answer to that's probably no. He says, if not, you should. Game Above Capital, I guess that's a company that Batch works for, is prepared to pay you, in all caps here, $1 million for 1 year. Are you ready to be an Eagle? My guess is, even for $1 million, the answer to that question is probably no, because Williams' long-term future is worth a lot more potentially than just $1 million. But this is another example of what we kind of have a lot of here right now, where there's a lot of bold print headlines. Charlie Batch offers Caleb Williams $1 million. Well, if Eastern Michigan's doing this, what's so-and-so school going to do? And the honest truth is that Williams probably does have an opportunity to make himself some money here on the open market as a part of the transfer portal and kind of the second off season of NIL. But I still kind of circle back on this the same way that I have now for a while, that most of what gets kicked around related to name, image, likeness is simply unsubstantiated rumors. And I think at some point in time, somebody's got to do some true, actual reporting about what's really going on. I've told you before, I don't believe that Quinn Ewers got $1 million for going to Ohio State. I just don't believe that. I know a little thing or two about the business world. I know a little thing or two about equity stakes and kind of phony companies with Mickey Mouse valuations, and sometimes that's the kind of thing that sort of feels like it's part of this. And I'm not trying to be a hater, because if he is getting $1 million, he probably deserves it. He's a very good player, at least he has the potential to be. But I think right now we're kind of in a world where we're so new into the name, image, likeness world that a big seven-figure sum looks so good in a headline that there aren't very many reporters who really want to question the veracity of that claim. For the player, it certainly sounds good to make it be thought that you're getting offered that kind of money. For the program, obviously it sounds good to be connected to that kind of rumor because other recruits might want to come and be a part of your program. For the kind of booster who might be throwing that kind of money around, it's obviously very good to be kind of thought of as a big shot. But it doesn't seem like right now we're kind of actually going back and doing our homework very well on what actually is happening. Everybody's got a motive to exaggerate claims like this just because it makes you sound big and bad and, makes it sound fun and, big numbers look good in headlines. Therefore, the media, for the most part, is a willing accomplice on all of this. But at a certain point, especially during this offseason where there's all kinds of innuendo and, some of that's been shot down already. Others of it kind of linger out there in the atmosphere a little bit. Getting a little more actual, true, factual reporting on what's truly going on here, I think that actually do us some good, and we'll see if anybody actually wants to do that. By the way, one more transfer story to get to. No word on if NIL played a role in this or not. But Zack Evans, you know him. He is on his way to Ole Miss. Good-looking shot there on the screen. Michael Carvell providing that for us there as well. First of all, I love those powder blue Ole Miss uniforms. I just do. The powder blue Ole Miss jerseys are absolutely fantastic. Nice verse of scripture there from Evans, leaving TCU on his way to Ole Miss. And I told you yesterday, I think this offseason sets up to be a little tumultuous for the Rebels. Lane Kiffin maybe wanted to leave, take a bigger job. I don't quite know that he had an offer to do that. He's lost both of his coordinators. Ole Miss kind of swung and missed for its 2022 signing class. That Kiffin now kind of becomes a version of what Dan Mullen once was, going to the transfer portal to get what you couldn't get in recruiting. And that can be a recipe to put a pretty good roster together. I mean, obviously, a guy like Zack Evans proved at TCU that he really is a good player. And, I don't think that Georgia ever got involved second time around on Zack Evans because I feel like they'd been down that road. I feel like Georgia thought it had been down that road. But Evans in the SEC is an impact player in the SEC West. And so that is clearly some good news for Ole Miss there on that. We will make that cruising around the SEC, courtesy of our friends at Royal Caribbean. All right, 2 words on a little bit of superstition from me coming up in just a moment. Before that, though, let me give a shout out to my friends at the Finnish Long Drink. This time of year, as you head towards a national championship game on Monday, a little beverage in your hand probably feels like the right thing to do. Nice cold can. And a lot of times when you're thinking cold can in your hand, you're thinking beer. Well, my friends at the Finnish Long Drink, that comes in a can as well. It looks like a beer, but it's not. It's the kind of thing you want to try if you haven't tried it before. It's a ready-to-drink cocktail. It comes in 4 different varieties. There's the blue can, which you just saw on the screen a moment ago. That's traditional. It's got the gin kick, the grapefruit flavor. You got the long drink cranberry, which is, as it is described, cranberry flavor. Long drink strong, 8.5% alcohol by volume. That's a black can. Long drink zero carbs, zero sugar. You can also go to thelongdrink.com, put in your zip code, find out where you can pick up some today, and you can get one of these 8-can variety packs, which includes 2 different versions of each of the long drink varieties. 8 cans, 2 cans of each variety. You can find that out today by checking out thelongdrink.com. It's been in the United States now for a couple of years, started in Finland, back in Helsinki in the 1950s, but it's in Georgia now. So thelongdrink.com and find out where you can get more of that. So a couple of things here for a moment. I don't consider myself to be a superstitious person, but I am going to engage in 2 activities of superstition right now as a way to hopefully exercise some demons going into Monday. If you're watching on video, I'm going to show you this, and if you're listening radio podcast, you won't be able to see this, but nonetheless, I want to do this. This is a Dog Nation quarter zip pullover. It is essentially my game day uniform when the weather kind of dips below 60 degrees. I almost always wear this Dog Nation quarter zip black pullover over the red shirt. That's just kind of my yes, a lot of people have kind of a game day uniform. This is kind of my game day uniform. I like to kind of support the Dog Nation brand. Yeah, we'll come in close on this. I like to support the Dog Nation brand. It just kind of makes some sense to do it. It's comfortable. I like the quarter zip golf pullover thing. It's just kind of my look, kind of my thing. That's what I like to do. But it did occur to me this week that because I wear this so much, I have also worn this every single one of the recent losses that Georgia has had to Alabama. I was wearing this in December in the SEC title game, almost certainly. I know for a fact I was wearing this in the 2017 national title game, 2018 SEC title game. Pretty sure I was wearing it last October in Tuscaloosa because the weather had at least cooled off enough where I probably was. Maybe I wasn't, but I think I was. But at least 3 of these 4 losses, I have been wearing this quarter zip pullover there at that time. And so what I have decided is, as a way of just trying to change up the vibe. I am not a superstitious person. I am not. But as a way of trying to change it up here and change up the vibe, I am not wearing this thing on Saturday. I love it. I'll wear it again at some point in time. I almost wore it today. But I am not wearing it on the game on Monday as a way of hopefully creating. Even if I don't believe it works, why not? Why take chances? I'm just going to wear some different clothes on Monday to see if it produces a different outcome. The other thing on kind of like that sort of superstitious bent, I've told you before that as a dog fan who came of age as a child in the 80s and then throughout the 90s is kind of heading towards my teenage years, my conversation around Georgia football is just greatly influenced by Larry Munson. Munson was my guy. Obviously, everybody who's kind of my age sort of feels that same way. Like my experience of understanding Georgia football came through my ears of hearing the way that Larry Munson talked about the sport, and that was a very good thing. So many happy memories connected for me about that. But as a lot of you are aware, Munson was also one of those guys that, hey, he just sort of saw danger lurking around every corner. And, every opponent was the greatest of all time. Everything with Georgia was just, too much to overcome. And that was just kind of Munson's way here. And a lot of us have kind of an inner Larry Munson when it comes to the way we talk about Georgia football if you came of age during that time. And I've told you before that it's almost one of those things I can't really help. And so there's a part of me that sort of needs to articulate anything bad that could happen as a way of hopefully trying to take the air out of that balloon and take the power out of that idea before you actually get to game day. And along the lines of the superstition of not wearing the same clothes again, because why not just try something different? There's also this thing of I really feel like that there's a conversation that we had a lot going into the SEC championship game that we're not having as much this week, and it's concerning me a little bit. That Larry Munson voice that sort of lives inside of me, it's kind of concerning me just a little bit right now. Do you feel like we're talking about Will Anderson enough right now? Because I sort of don't feel like we are. This is a guy that still probably stands alongside a Bryce Young as kind of a national award level player. And my gosh, we spent so much time going into the SEC championship game of saying, hey, you got to stop Bryce Young, but you got to block Will Anderson. That's a very big deal. And multiple tight ends being used to do that. Big day from Jamari Salyer. Warren McClendon is a way of kind of getting that done. You got to be aware of Will Anderson at all times. And I think the Bryce Young game in the SEC championship was so good that it's almost obscured the ability that Will Anderson has on defense. Now, I'm not telling you I think Will Anderson's going to have multiple sacks or dominate the game and be the reason why Georgia loses. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that I sort of feel like the inner Larry Munson in me, much the same way I'm sort of superstitiously choosing not to wear the same clothes on Monday. There's that sort of inner Larry Munson in me that wants to kind of voice the concern of, hey, it's still important to watch out for Will Anderson. It's still important to block up Will Anderson. It's still very important to be aware of where he is at all times, because we certainly talked a lot about that going into the game at the beginning of December, and it seems appropriate to kind of mention that name here again as we go into the game Monday night here in January there as well. So do with that what you will. A couple other things here really quick. Reminders on this. Tomorrow, 12:30 p.m., we're going to blast out the link for you to be a part of it with us. I'll be live in studio. We're going to be on the air. Now, let me make one thing very clear. You will watch this show the same way you watch every other show. All the Dog Nation video platforms. You'll watch it the same way you do all of them. We're going to Chase the Championship tomorrow at 12:30. But if you want to participate in the broadcast, we're going to send you a link out that you can join. And much like old school, caller-driven talk radio, we're just going to pull up your video feed and let you tell us about the game, tell us what you think a Georgia championship would mean to you and mean to the rest of us here around Dog Nation. We're going to give you 45, 60 seconds or so, just kind of let your voice be heard, and we're going to try to do as many of those as we can over the course of about an hour on air. I have no idea how it's going to work, but we're going to try it and see how it goes and have some fun with all of that tomorrow. I'm actually really looking forward to that. And then on Sunday and Monday from Indianapolis, I'm going to get a big old sack on my shoulder. I'm going to walk around with a bunch of Chase for the Championship T-shirts. And if you can find me, if I can find you, I want to give you one free of charge while supplies last. Sizes, we'll see while they last there as well, whatever else. But I'm just going to give out as many of those as I can because I want good vibes heading towards Monday night for the college football playoff national championship game between Georgia and Alabama. By the way, that's our forecast via the Weather Channel. Monday, 27 for a high, I believe, 9 degrees for a low. The wardrobe I took with me to Miami is not what we're taking to Indianapolis. That is all I can say about that. We are getting loaded up on the cold weather gear. By the way, one more thing here. I promise you the folks over at Space Dogs are looking forward to a big win for UGA on Monday. And they also are looking forward to a great year in the crypto space coming up here in 2022. And if you want to know more about that cryptocurrency world, Space Dogs is a great place to begin for that because they got some really cool new products available that can get you involved in crypto and help you understand more about it. They can take the mystery out of it for you. So check out their website. It's dogs.io. Dogs, of course, spelled the way it's supposed to be. Even people who are far smarter than me in the tech world, the crypto world, they still know how to spell dogs. DAWGS, dogs.io. Find out about the Dogs token, the Dogs wallet, the space card. These are all really cool ways to make the transactions you're participating in online safer, more secure. Good UGA people run this. It's a really cool website that teaches you all about the crypto space. Check out dogs.io today. All right, couple of golden shoes to wrap up our final edition of this program before heading to Indianapolis and, of course, seeing you tomorrow for Chase for the Championship. Golden shoe number 1. This is kind of funny. I think this is a fake photo, I believe, but it's still really funny. CD on Twitter says the officials are prepping for Monday night's game. So you got the crimson-colored stripes, the Alabama hat on the official, and the Alabama official carrying, or should they, the official for the game carrying the Alabama equipment bag. Very funny stuff by CD. I'm not into ref conspiracies all that much, but I do think that's too funny not to share. So good stuff by CD will make you a golden shoe winner for today. Also, our buddy T-Rock, this is just really clever. So these are his curtains in kind of his man cave type room. If you're watching, you see kind of like the silver gray on the outside, red, white, black. That's the exact stripe of the Georgia football pants made into curtains. That's a really clever idea. And frankly, this is like almost like Dog Nation Daily version of Pinterest. Some of y'all are going to steal this idea. That's really cool and really well done. I am very impressed by that by our buddy T-Rock. We'll make him a well-deserved golden shoe winner today. I also like the Georgia-themed golf bag there as well. By the way, Gator Hater Countdown. The reigning national champions, we believe, are going to be heading to Jacksonville in October. Let me tell you something. Those Florida fans are going to hate every second of that. What are Georgia fans going to be like in Jacksonville with the national championship trophy in their back pocket? 295 days from right now, we will find out. See you tomorrow. Chase for the Championship live on video. Your chance to be a part of it. Then this weekend from Indianapolis. We will talk to you then, everybody. Enjoy it. And on video. Time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. That show was about 12 hours long. About Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien style epic saga. But nonetheless, got a lot going on, so you might as well have a big conversation about all of that. We'll try not to shortchange your comments here, and I'm glad to have you with us. Georgia Fan 86, excited about being on the show tomorrow. Yeah, I hope you will. I mean, honestly, it's like folks who are good commenters on our video platforms are the exact people that should be joining us live tomorrow because it's kind of weird. Like some of you I do meet face-to-face. A lot of you I don't get a chance to. I think it'd be kind of cool to see some of you face-to-face. Steve Island says the golden shoe needs to go the way of Mullen. Not a chance on that. Golden shoe's here to stay. Xavier, just because more than anything, I just like having a fun way to close out the show. Like I really try not to be so super serious all the time. I really, really try that, and that's just an easy way of not being super serious. Xavier Keitel says the one on the right may be accurate. Yeah. So, Xavier Keitel on the subject of the Bama themed golden shoe. Yeah, clearly. See, I'm colorblind. So, when I see the picture on the left, it's not immediately obvious to me that's a crimson. No, this is the other golden shoe we're talking about. When I'm colorblind, so believe it or not, it's not immediately obvious to me on the left. That's a crimson colored shirt that the referee's wearing. It makes it funnier when I find out that's what it is. But it takes me a second to realize that's crimson colored, which is my problem, not yours. Cam Hasty says, woke up this morning with a message from a Bama friend of mine who is gifting me 2 national championship tickets. Cam, that is amazing. That is incredible. That is awesome. Congratulations to you on that, and cool that a Bama friend would come through for you on that. Here's the other thing. Y'all watch this a little bit, and I realize that it's still going to be expensive no matter what, but ticket prices are coming down. We predicted this a little bit because, listen, way before I was a member of the Coastal Elite Broadcast Media, I was a fan that spent a lot of money on tickets over the years. And Georgia, Alabama, and Indianapolis, because it is cold and it is far away, it was just the chances are of a much lower ticket market for this game than when these two teams played in Atlanta going back 2017 when the get-in price that day was thousands of dollars. We just had the sense that this ticket would be a little bit more accessible to the average fan. It's still going to be expensive, of course, but it is more accessible. So, y'all, keep your head on a swivel. I mean, maybe this is worth making some last-minute plans for, because let me tell you what you can do. You don't have to fly to Indianapolis. I'm driving. It's literally, if you live in Atlanta, it's Atlanta to Nashville, Nashville to Louisville, Louisville to Indianapolis. Now, the Indianapolis hotel scene, I'm understanding, is pretty, pretty crowded right now. But Louisville's like an hour and a half away, y'all. And Louisville does not have, like Indianapolis. I mean, you'd choke if you knew what I was spending on a hotel this weekend. Louisville's not going to have those, inflated prices. So if you live in the Atlanta area, I'm just using that as kind of a simple for instance, watch those ticket prices. If they come down low enough, and you got to be careful who you buy them from, of course, but if they come down low enough, consider driving to Louisville, spend the night there. I think check me on my math on this, but I believe Louisville's an hour and a half to Indianapolis. You can be there on game day. Indianapolis is a little bit of an accessible city to kind of get around in. That means if you can get parked, you can get to the stadium. Then you can be on your way out the door after that. Obviously, still requires some means to do that. You have to be able to get off from work. I understand there's some restrictions that would prevent you from being able to do that. But if you haven't been open to the idea of going to the game, maybe you should change your mind because the prices on those tickets are coming down. Just use a reputable outlet. Don't buy them from, whatever. But check out on that and if you're ever open to the possibility of going, this may be a time worth considering on that. Rodney Baxter says you can make the drive in 7.5 hours from Atlanta, BA, done it several times. Yeah, Rodney's right about this. Like, I drove to Miami this past time. I'll never do that again. Now, it was fun because we actually went to Orlando on the way back and kind of made some fun out of it. So it was kind of a cool deal. But Atlanta to Miami is twice as long as you think it ever could be. And by comparison, Atlanta to Indianapolis is a lot closer than most of you probably realize. It's kind of like, I was thinking about this, I don't know why. The whole thing about Atlanta and Indianapolis being closer than you think kind of ties into, it's kind of a cool trivia question. For those of you who are Atlanta Braves fans, do you know what the closest Major League Baseball franchise to Atlanta is, other than the Braves? The next closest franchise to the Braves. It's Cincinnati. It's the Reds. It's not Tampa. It's not Miami. It's not Washington. It's Cincinnati. That you go, in this case, up 65 or up 75, you actually kind of get to the Midwest a lot quicker than you might think. So it's kind of the same thing. Indianapolis is a little closer than you realize. Miriam Corbin says the drive to Miami is grueling. It really is. And I've been driving to Florida my entire life. Like, when I was a kid, my family, we always drove to Daytona for vacation. That's not close either. So that was our family vacation spot when I was a kid, was driving to Daytona Beach. That's a little bit of a long drive too, but we drove it every single year. And what you realize is, like, one year my wife and I, we drove to Naples for vacation. Naples might as well be on another planet. I mean, that's more, Gulf side or whatever. But you sort of get kind of in that sort of either like Southwest Gulf side or Southeast Atlantic side. I mean, it is just another hemisphere away. I don't believe I'll ever do that again. Don't believe I'll ever do that again. Cody Taylor says 10-hour ride to Miami. Yeah, Cody, I wish it was 10 hours. Somehow we turned what should have been a 10-hour trip into like about a 13-hour trip. I still don't understand how we do this. And my kids are pretty good travelers in that, they're just thrilled to have unfettered access to technology. So, like, they're just happy to be back there scrolling YouTube and, Nintendo Switches and everything like that. They're just thrilled to be able to do that without anybody, getting onto them. So they would literally be in the car for 20 hours if they could be, because they get all that technology. But somehow we still turn a 10-hour trip to a 13-hour trip. Now, part of that's because I have to go to Buc-ee's and stand in line for, barbecue sandwiches and things like that. But still, it still turns into a longer trip than it probably should. Santiago D. Arnold says, please share your honest feelings on if Stetson Bennett has another 1, 2, or 3 interception game and JT never sees the field. I'm happy to talk about that, Santiago, especially because you're such a good commenter over the years. I simply trust that Kirby Smart must have a good reason for making the decision that he made. And selfishly, I really hope it turns out to be right. Now, I also believe in Stetson Bennett. I don't mind telling you. I think that Booger McFarland, what he said this week, is wrong. I think Stetson Bennett has shown you in games like Michigan that he's capable of playing well on Monday, but he hasn't in the previous 2 times he's played against Alabama. I do not want to be on that postgame show on Monday night having to endure the kind of conversation that will go on if Georgia plays badly, loses, if Stetson Bennett's kind of viewed as the reason why. Selfishly, I just don't really want to be a part of it. Now I'm going to show up and do my job, and I'm sure people will, throw stones at me for whatever reason. But selfishly, I hope that Kirby Smart does get vindicated on all of this, because it's going to be good for me if he does. But I'm not one of these kind of people that assumes that someone who hasn't seen anything knows better than someone who has seen everything. And Smart's seen it all. And Todd Monken has seen it all. These Georgia players have seen it all. And they seem to be very happy with the decision that's been made here. And their legacies are the ones that are on the line if they win or lose. So I am more than happy to allow them to make that choice, Monken and Smart in this case. I'm more than happy to let them do it. And if it doesn't work out, then you know exactly what the conversation is going to be. But you know what? The very best, most successful people in life are not driven by a fear of failure. They're just not. And in this case, I don't think Kirby Smart is either. Damon Smith says, at this point, just support the team. Yeah, I mean, and Damon, I've been kind of right there with you on that, which does not mean that you can't think that Smart's made the wrong decision. I've told you at times before. There's a part of me that suspects that JT was probably the better of the 2 quarterbacks. I am now reconsidering my opinion because of how I've seen Stetson play, and also by the way in which, Daniels has been handled. I'm reconsidering my opinion that it must be wrong. But there's nothing wrong with having a difference in opinion. You don't have to just go along with whatever the company line is. You don't have to do that. Certainly on my job, I don't have to do that. I don't work for UGA. I just work for a show that covers UGA. It's not my job to carry Kirby Smart's water on this necessarily, but as speaking from someone who does the show from the perspective of a fan, at a certain point in time, you have to make peace with this. And I said this on one of our shows last week, and some of you got mad at me, and I simply don't care. That you have to make your choice. Are you all in or not? And I just think you want to be very careful here, because trust me, there are people who are keeping receipts. Now, listen, I'm too much of a gentleman. I'm not going to drag out some of the things y'all have said before, or some of the things that a lot of these other media people have said before. And you kind of know some of the cheap shot stuff that Stetson's dealt with. I'm too much of a gentleman to drag that back out on some of y'all. But other people are not going to be quite as kind as I am. Some of y'all are keeping receipts of each other. And just be very careful that you don't say something in the lead up to this that you will wish that you could have taken back if Stetson goes out there and proves you wrong on Monday. Let's see what else. Let me go to Edward Moore Jr. R. Edward Moore Jr. says, if we lock down Williams in the run game, The only threat they have is tight end to set up the seam. Yeah, I told you this before. This was very strange. Like one night I was watching one of these random bowl games. Like I don't even remember which one. It's like middle of the week prior to Christmas. It was like it was as random of a bowl game as you could get. And Trevor Maddich, who, by the way, my gosh, he looks like he ate the previous Trevor Maddich. But either way, he's sitting there on the desk, and he broke out some of the best analysis. Now, it was awful because he was describing everything that Georgia did wrong. But some of the analysis he gave of that game, like in the middle of like some random bowl game, was really pretty spot on. And one of the things he kind of like highlighted was the way in which Alabama used the tight end the first time around, which was like, okay, Georgia sends this pressure, and that makes the tight end kind of the hot route read for Bryce Young, and Georgia's trying to anticipate that by dropping a linebacker into that kind of like that green grass area where the hot route should be going. But they're basically trying to bait Bryce Young into a bad throw. And like Maddich is like laying all this down on film. It's really pretty fascinating. That so like tight end kind of reads that, and now he kind of turns away and goes towards the sideline, wide, open, and like it kind of sucks to hear your team kind of kicked apart like that, but picked apart like that. But like Maddich was like just laying it down in like very, very specific detail about kind of what had gone wrong for Georgia there in that spot. So I do think that's true about how Alabama uses those kind of secondary targets. And here's the other thing I've said now for a while. I do not expect to put a goose egg next to Jameson Williams' name on Monday. I just don't. I think he's too good. I think Bryce Young's too good. I am not also going to lose my lunch if Jameson gets the big catch. If he catches a 25, 40-yard pass, big explosive play, if he catches a couple of them, I'm not going to go crazy on that. I'm just not. If he catches his fourth, at that point in time, I'm starting to get a little nervous. But I think that you have to view a certain baseline of achievement that Alabama's likely to enjoy, and you've got to figure out things defensively that you can do to negate that, and also things you can do offensively to come close to matching that. And that's what it comes down to. I mean, like I'm a kid of the 90s, the old Dan Patrick line on SportsCenter. You can't stop him, you only hope to contain him. I mean, there is a can't stop him, only hope to contain him type thing when it comes to that duo of Bryce to Jameson. So contain him. If you do that, keep him to 27 points. You give yourself a chance to win this football game. And by the way, great defense from Georgia on Monday is 20-something points for Alabama. It's not 13. Maybe they go out there and just totally dominate the game. It's certainly possible on the Bayes' theorem of possible outcomes. It's on the spectrum. But the more likely thing, the middle of that bell curve, the middle of that distribution is a 20-something type point performance where you have a chance to win that way. What else? Matt Rukavina says, I'm politely saying I'm taking names. Look, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I've gotten frustrated at times a little bit this season. I think there are some people who've gone out of their way to try to ruin the experience of the rest of us. I'm not going to lie about that. But I've also, I put all that to bed. I really did. I went to Miami and I had a great time. And I'm looking forward to being in Indianapolis this weekend. And I am quite hopeful that Georgia wins on Monday. I really am. I think that Georgia will win. And when they do, I will make this promise to you now. Because at one point in time, I was going to do something different. I just said that was a bad idea. But I will make this problem to you now that when Georgia wins the national championship and when people start changing their online screen names and deleting their old tweets and everything like that, I am going to simply welcome you all right back into the fold. I really am. I'm going to simply welcome you all right back into the fold. Now, if Georgia doesn't win, there are going to be a lot of you who are going to be saying, see, I told you so. And you know what? You have every right to do that. I am fine with letting you have your piece. I really am. I really am. You can have your piece. You can say, see, I told you so. I don't think waiting for see, I told you so is a very good way to go through life, but that's your business. So that's my deal. When Georgia wins, all of you are welcome back into the fold as far as I'm concerned. When Georgia loses, I'll be braced for the worst, and I'm sure it's coming my way. Alan Bryan, the team comes to Indianapolis tonight. They will be in Indy tonight. We should have Dog Nation video coverage of that for you one way or another. I'm going to go to YouTube in a second. Joel Moody saying the BA saying don't write checks you can't cash. Yeah, that's really true. It's one of the reasons. Like, my hope in life is to be doing this show or some show like this. Who knows how the technology changes? But I'm in my early 40s now. I expect to be doing a Georgia show for the next 30 years. God willing, good health, good personal decisions. I hope to be doing whatever the technology exists 3 decades from now, who knows? Maybe I'll be just like, injecting something into your brain. Who knows how technology changes? But as long as I have voice, as long as there is internet bandwidth, I hope to be doing a Georgia show for the next 30 years. That means I'm not going to trade a short-term win for what can be a long-term gain. As a commenter said, I'm not going to write checks that I can't cash. That means that I'm not going to tell you that Georgia will win a game by 40 points unless I think it's going to. And that means that I'm not going to give up all hope on Georgia unless I think it's justified, that I am going to be at times maybe a little bit more measured because my hope is to be doing this for 30 years. That means I'm not going to trade my credibility in any moment for the loudest, most possible, obnoxious opinion I can create. And that is just the way that is. Marcus Chafin says we're undefeated in white in the playoffs. That's right. Rose Bowl was white jerseys. Michigan was white jerseys, and Georgia will be in the white on Friday as well. I told you before I'm colorblind, and so when how the equipment folks and sometimes they'll take and share those pictures of the Georgia uniforms hanging in the lockers prior to the game. Before the Michigan game, I was looking at the photos that somebody had shared, and this kind of goes back to the whole issue with the Georgia silver britches not being silver enough. But to me, at first, the britches, they was the same pants Georgia always wears. But in my mind, the way the photo, I guess, was processed or something, they looked like they were white pants. And I was like, oh, my gosh, is Georgia wearing all white in this game? That comes to find out that's not true. But to my eyes, it sort of looked that way to begin with. And I had to ask somebody, wait, are these the same pants as always? And that person said, yes, BA, those are the same pants as always. But at first I was like, wow, is Georgia wearing white pants too? I don't believe that Georgia's going to use the college football playoff to break out any kind of alternate uniforms. But you're right. 2 previous playoff games in the whites, and that's exactly what Georgia has done. I have not been on YouTube yet, and those folks are going to be out of their mind but not giving their voice a chance to be heard. So let me get over there. And by the way, speaking of voices being heard, tomorrow, 12:30, your chance to be a part of the broadcast with us. We're going to send you a link. You're going to watch it on any of these video platforms the same way you always do. But if you want to join us live, we'll give you a link to be able to do that. Doghouse Outdoors asked about what we're wearing on Monday. That will be the white jerseys. Thomas Van Santa says, I believe by the third quarter, Georgia will be way ahead of schedule to win. Love to hear that. Let me see what BA's cardigan says here. Since I'm not giving him the clothes that he wants, I can at least pay special attention to his comment. He says, BA, I know you're driving to Indy, sir, and I really like that cardigan on your way up. Here's the thing, BA. I'm now responding. Here's the thing. I'm taking that cardigan with me. It's going to be freezing cold. I'm taking every layer I got. Every layer I got. Literally, I was laying out sweatshirts, vests, coats. I am taking every layer I have to Indianapolis. I'm going to be, look, Southern boy like me does not know anything about these kind of temperatures. Y'all, this is dangerous. This is dangerously cold for me. I have no idea what to, how to handle all of that. I have no idea how to handle all that. I don't even like ice in my bourbon. You think I know how to handle ice on the roads? Scott Bolin says, not many comments from me. We just need a win. Dog Nation needs it. I just want to see the celebration. Scott, I'm right there with you. I understand all of that. That there is a sense that some of you are just ready. You're just restless and ready. And I do get that. I absolutely get that. Matt Presley says, I saw an interesting stat from SEC Championship. When Georgia didn't blitz, Bryce Young, 18 of 24, 330 yards, 3 touchdowns. When Georgia did blitz, Bryce was 8 of 20 for 91 yards and no touchdowns. That's actually really interesting. Now, sometimes in the NFL, good quarterbacks have the opposite kind of number where they do actually perform well against the blitz because there's obviously more passing opportunities opened up. But what you're saying with those stats matches what I saw with my own eyes. It did seem like towards the end of the game, second half, Georgia got more aggressive. Now, some of that may have been John Mechie no longer being in the game because it's kind of hard to isolate, the meaning of a stat sometimes. But with what you're saying statistically the story was, my own eyes kind of told me the same thing. Seems like Georgia got more aggressive as the game went on and the defensive results started getting a little bit better. Mike Johnson, checking not our buddy Mike Johnson, but a different Mike Johnson, on the subject of Zamir White, the Georgia running game. Yeah, there's no doubt that running game is going to be a big factor. And I mentioned a moment ago that on the Alabama side, not quite so sure we've talked enough about Will Anderson going into this game. On the Georgia side of that, it's still the thing we haven't quite talked about enough is the need for the Georgia running game to have a great game in a game like this. A lot of the success in the Michigan game was really about the Georgia passing attack. And a lot of the could-have-been betters from the SEC championship game, a lot of that included the Georgia running game there too. So I think that Mike is right, whether you sing out an individual name or just talk about the group overall and include the offensive line in that there as well. Establishing a little bit of a mandate for yourself on the ground, I think is probably pretty important here too. Heath Williams says, I live in Florida, would like some Gator Hater gear. Where can I buy some? Yeah, we used to sell it. It's one of those things where, like, in recent years, and this is kind of all made above my head, is that the corporate folks kind of like the idea of giving the T-shirts away, and people always come back and say, well, if you give them away, I can't get one. You always give them away before I get to it. And I do understand that, and that's the message I try to convey to people there as well. But there's been this thought in recent years of, hey, instead of charging people, the amount of money you have to charge to make a T-shirt thing kind of worth it, what if we charge a sponsor for them and print the T-shirts and then give them away for free, which is great if you get one, but not so great if you don't. So hopefully we'll print some new Gator Hater gear at some point in time, and maybe we'll do something to make it a little bit more accessible for other people. DMart42 on the subject of Jim Donnan, who was a little bit more open to some of the alternate uniform stuff than some other folks were. That is true. And admittedly, I love Coach Donnan, but I did not always love those alternate uniforms, to be fair. Brad Cassidy says, I feel like Zeus's play digresses against Alabama. He needs 10, 12 carries max. Cook, Milton, obviously better. Yeah, I know that Kendall remains a big fan favorite, and I hope we get a chance to see it, but I kind of go to the same thing on the running back that I go on the quarterback thing for a little bit. That, Del McGee's a smart guy. Del McGee is not going to keep a running back that's, quote, obviously better on the bench. It's not going to do that. So much the same way there's a hierarchy established at quarterback, I'm assuming that's for a reason. The hierarchy that gets established at running back, I also assume that's for a reason. Now, I think they also all have the potential of being good, and a mixture of all of them, I think, is kind of part of the recipe for the game on Monday. But one thing I think we can all agree on is Georgia does need more from that running game. Is it phony unit? Is that how you pronounce this comment? It says, how about silver helmets, white jerseys, silver pants? Listen, eventually it's just going to be like, eventually the floodgate's going to open and Georgia's going to wear a different uniform every game like all these other programs do. And so I'm starting to think I might be here for that. Chrome silver helmet with the G on the side. I mean, eventually, why not? Just do it all. Just let it go. Scott Boland says, what's the sports memorabilia piece you want to commemorate the UGA National Championship? For me, it's a very simple answer. It's actually a very simple thing. You see Michael, can you put up one of the pictures of the field editions? Do you have that package that you can show? So I have framed field editions from the 2017 games, the SEC Championship and from the Rose Bowl. And did not get the field edition from the Orange Bowl. But this is the thing, and you see the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Dog Nation, that we give these out to the players. Like that's what I want right there. I love these things so much. I always have. Now, I will tell you this. This is a little bit of inside baseball here for a moment. So for the Rose Bowl, I know this makes me sound like a spoiled brat, but I was very, very lucky. Not only did I get the field edition after the game, I got a rose from the Rose Bowl. I was on the field after the game. One of the roses was laying there on the turf, and I got the rose. And I kept it. It's like, you know how like they wilt eventually, and a lot of the women know how to do this thing where they close them in a book or something like that, and it kind of like preserves the dried flower. I don't know how to do this, but it's one of those things. So somewhere I still have the rose from the Rose Bowl, and on Friday I was trying to get down there to get an orange from the field. All the players were kind of throwing all the oranges and things like that, and I just didn't get down there in time. All the oranges were gone. I did get some confetti. So I got a bunch of the confetti that was coming down from the Orange Bowl on Friday. I did get some of that. My whole family got just gobs of this confetti, and so we've got that somewhere. But this is the thing I want. This is the artifact that I want. Assuming that Georgia wins, there will probably be one of these deals right here. I want that framed from the field, from the game, and for me, it's as simple as that. There's a lot of cool things you could have, but for me, it really comes down to being about that simple. And if you want to, you can go back straight on with the photo with the camera shot again to finish this off here. A couple more comments. We'll get ready to go. Daniel Calvino says to B.A.'s cardigan, he's nothing if not persistent. He really is. Listen, I love B.A.'s cardigan's comments. Always very fun. Always very fun. Frank Patterson says the cardigan's going to Indy, game day outfit. I'm going to have multiple layers on for game day. Multiple layers for sure. Stephen Venanzi says, will you be in the field for most of the game and post game or in the stands? During the game, I'll be in the press box. Now, depending on how the game goes, I may have to take a walk for a minute. Seems like the last couple of games I've done that. But yeah, in the press box for the game and then down around the field for the post-game show. Paul Moon says probably can't be there tomorrow, but pour out a long drink for me. Paul, we certainly will do that. By the way, we have a commenter now called Stetson's Flip Phone, which is very funny. Jermaine King says, be careful driving through that Tennessee snow. Yeah, I'm going to try my best to. Wally Smith says, what's your thoughts on the game and a prediction? I like Georgia. I'll take them 31-27. How about that? That's my prediction to win the game. 31-27. Frank Patterson having some fun with one of my previous comments. Mike Johnson says I'm going to cry a lot, win or lose, and I kind of know where you're coming from on that, and I kind of get that there as well, for sure. What else? Doghouse Outdoors also mentioning Ladd McConkey. That's one of those guys that come up big in a game like this because he's got the lateral quickness to get himself open. I think Stetson likes throwing over the middle. That's where Ladd makes a lot of money for himself. I could see Ladd being a big player in a game like this. Frank Patterson asking about Dominic Blaylock. Yeah, I just don't know how healthy he is, to be honest with you. And, I think it's also one of those concerns. It's a little bit like George Pickens the same way. It's like you're healthy enough to play now, but you've also missed a lot of time and kind of getting back reacclimated again. And the offense is not always the easiest thing to do. It's not really plug and play in football the way that it might be sometimes in other sports there as well. Myron Bird says, I can foresee Bryce Young throwing a couple of interceptions, enough to put us in position to put points on the board. Boy, I'd love that to be right. Let me see what Young's numbers are on the year. How many interceptions has he thrown? Let's see. He's thrown 5 picks. So his touchdown to interception ratio is more than 9-1. I just don't know that I've been living well enough. I don't know that I've been kind enough to my fellow man to earn 2 interceptions from Bryce Young on a night like this, but boy, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. All right, what else? We got to go. D-Mart42 having some fun with me. Chase White wants to see George Pickens battling against Kool-Aid McKinstry. Pretty good stuff there. What else? We got to go. All All right, so many good comments. We got to get ready to bounce out of here, though. Crow King 123 says Bryce pretty safe with the football. Remember, Cincinnati has some elite cornerbacks. They do have a good secondary. That's true. But as I think our previous commenter Marlon, I think what he's saying though is, hey, you get enough pass pressure on somebody, who knows what decision they make at that point in time. I'd be a very happy guy with a couple of free possessions. I would be a very happy guy with a couple of free possessions. Let's see what else. Real Boss says you got to get Darnell Washington open in space more. Can't nobody cover Darnell on Alabama. Nobody get him going down the field like he played his freshman year. Yeah, I mean, we said this off the top of the show. There are a handful of playmakers. Smart said this before the season. You got to involve these playmakers and find a way to get them the football. Darnell's one of those guys. George Pickens, one of those guys. Jermaine Burton, one of those guys. James Cook is certainly one of those guys. Guys like that have to be a factor in a similar vein to what Brock Bowers is to have a chance to win this game. And George has a chance, but actually finished it off and actually win the game. That is what becomes important. Great stuff. Thanks for being here as part of our R.S. Andrews Cool Down here today. Check out R.S. Andrews online, rsandrews.com, for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. Really appreciate that. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow, 12:30, for our Chase for the Championship special, where you have a chance to be on the broadcast with me. Excited about that. Then Monday morning, Dog Nation Daily, presented by Kroger, live from Indianapolis. Full game day slate after that. Pre-game from in and around a very chilly and cold Indianapolis, but one that's filled with Georgia fans ready to have a good time. We will see you all there for that. Dog Nation Daily, presented by Kroger. Talk to you then, everybody.